I'm Paul Fromm with the Canada First Immigration Reform Committee. We would like to have for Canada an immigration policy that benefits Canada and Canadians. What I want to talk to you about today is something called the Temporary Workers Visa Program, or sometimes called the Temporary Workers Program. How many temporary foreign workers do you think there are in Canada? 4,000? 40,000? Would you believe over 400,000? That's almost the population of Hamilton, Ontario. 400,000 temporary foreign workers. I guess we've got full employment, right? And that's why we need to import foreigners? But we don't. We have over 1.5 million Canadians. People like you, people like your children, people like your next door neighbor who are out of work. Well, in what universe would we need 400,000 temporary workers? Temporary foreign workers. Most of them from the third world. Well, the voices from the financial community will tell us there's a skill shortage. That's why we have to have temporary foreign workers. I ask, well, what skills? What skills? Well, let's look at some of the recent scandals in terms of temporary foreign workers. There's a lady named Sandy Nelson, and she lives in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. For the last 28 years, Sandy Nelson has worked at a place called Brothers Classic Grill and Pizza. Back in March, Sandy and the entire staff at Brothers Classic Grill and Pizza in Weyburn, Saskatchewan were fired. Why had they gone out of business? Well, no. Some were rehired, but not Sandy and not Shauna Jennison, another long-time worker, long-time experienced worker. In their place were temporary foreign workers. That's often how this program works. Replace Canadians with temporary foreign workers. No, it wasn't because Brothers Classic Grill and Pizza in Weyburn, Saskatchewan couldn't find anybody to do the job. That's the lie, we're told. We can't find Canadians to do this work. No, they had Canadians doing this work. They fired them and replaced them with foreign workers. In February, dozens of Canadian oil sands workers working up in the oil patch in Fort McMurray were let go. They were laid off and they were replaced by workers, temporary workers from Croatia. Now, the party line of much of the business establishment is they can't find Canadians to do these jobs. But Canadians were doing these jobs, only to be replaced by people on temporary workers' visas. Why? Well, certainly in many cases, it's because they can pay these people less. Also, they don't have to pay the benefits that they might have to pay for Canadian workers. It's wrong. And it's a scam. It's not that there are jobs that Canadians can't do or won't do. The temporary workers are being brought in on the cheap and they replace Canadians. CBC recently did a series of reports about the McDonald's chain of fast food restaurants, almost right across the country. Now, the McDonald's, many of its outlets are franchised, so somebody buys the franchise and gets the right to use the McDonald's name. And it turns out that in a number of parts of Canada, the franchise owners want to bring in workers on the temporary workers program to replace Canadians. The scandal really began out in Victoria, British Columbia, where a former manager blew the whistle on McDonald's and said that he had been told to hire Filipinos on temporary workers' visas, to cut back on the hours for Canadian workers. No, it's not that no Canadian wanted to work at McDonald's. Canadians did want to work at McDonald's. Canadians applied to work. In some cases, their applications were not even accepted. The franchise owners wanted Filipinos. And as the story developed, it turned out it wasn't an isolated case in Victoria. Now, the Minister of Employment, Jason Kenney, who had previously been the Immigration Minister, reacted and he at least pretended to be all upset. He said they were going to have an urgent investigation, and they banned that particular franchise from using the temporary workers program. But it turned out it wasn't just one bad apple. The story was repeated across the country. It turns out that McDonald's likes to bring, or these franchise owners likes to bring in workers from the Philippines, Belize, and Jamaica to do these entry-level jobs that Canadians want to do. I don't know how well you can see this fellow, but his name is Chris Eldridge. And Chris was a manager for McDonald's in the Lethbridge area of southern Alberta, and he quit. He said he could no longer do what he was asked to do, and that was to cut back on the hours for Canadian workers and to give full-time schedules to Filipinos. He said, "I feel it's definitely discriminating against Canadians." He said, "Honestly, some days I wonder if this is still Canada. Everyone's supposed to have equal rights." Well, unless you happen to be a native-born Canadian. I was instructed, he said, to ensure, based on the contracts that foreign workers had signed, that they would be guaranteed full-time hours, no questions asked. So, temporary foreign workers get a full 40 hours a week. Canadians are cut back, and in the end, it was just too much for him, and he quit. Well, the story, as they say in the newspaper business, had legs. More people came forth. Workers in other locations in British Columbia, Nova Scotia, in New Brunswick and Newfoundland. One person said, "The whole time I've worked at the local McDonald's, there's been nothing but favoritism toward the Filipinos," said a worker in New Brunswick. "Any Canadian who works here feels if he were to complain, it would be viewed as racist." So, Filipino temporary workers from the Philippines are favored, and Canadians feel, well, I mustn't speak up because I'm racist. We've been so brain battered with this propaganda that just standing up for yourself and your right to earn a living and to support your family is considered by some as racist. Another former manager in Edmonton said, "I can tell you on the franchise side of the business, this is the preferred hiring method. There are numerous other franchises in the system that will exclude hiring Canadians first." So let's come back to it. It's a lie. There isn't a skill shortage. There's a greed surplus, but not a skill shortage. Canadians do want to work. Canadians are willing to work, and greedy employers in some cases would rather hire cheap foreign labor than hire Canadians. Now, the theory is, with the temporary workers program, that an employer has to advertise, and only if he gets no response is he allowed to hire, is he allowed to get workers on temporary workers visas. Obviously, this is not enforced at all, but even in some cases that we know of where there was advertising, it's a farce. For instance, a Chinese coal company in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, 2 years ago advertised for coal mine, wanted to bring in Chinese coal miners. That's what they really wanted. But they went through the motions and they advertised. And here's what their ad said: "Wanted, experienced coal miners, Mandarin, a definite asset." Now, there are plenty of unemployed British Columbia and Cape Breton coal miners, but not a whole lot of them speak Mandarin. Now, imagine requiring Mandarin to dig coal in Canada, maybe in China, but in Canada. So that allowed the company to be all innocent and say, well, we advertised, but we didn't find anybody. Well, no, not with those unreasonable requirements. Fortunately, the labor movement protested, and the government came down hard on these people. But we wonder how many other situations there are. Temporary workers, 400,000 temporary workers, when we have 1.5 million Canadians unemployed and out of work? No way. Shut that program down today. This is Paul Fromm with the Canada First Immigration Reform Committee.